Hi, everybody. Welcome to our webinar for today. We are just going to give everybody maybe about 2 to 3 more minutes to hop on, and then we will get started. Thank you. All right, I think we will go ahead and get started today. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessie Shields, and I will be your host for today's webinar. Just a few housekeeping items to start with. Everyone will be muted during this presentation except for myself and our presenter, Vicki, so that we can get through all of the standards and resources. If you have questions along the way, please write them down for a Q&A at the end. So you can ask the questions in the chat box as well, which you can find in the upper left tab. It says chat. You just go ahead and type those in there and we can answer them throughout the presentation. Today's presenter will be Vicki Vermeer, and I will let her go ahead and get started. Vicki, it's all yours.
Great, thanks, Jessie. I am Vicki Vermeer from the Dordt College Center for Economic Education, and so we're going to jump right in today. Just an FYI as we get started, this will be recorded, and you will receive a copy of the recording and the PowerPoint. So all of the links that we've provided in the PowerPoint will be available to you at the end of the webinar. It might take a day or two for us to get them all sent out, but you will receive that, and feel free to pass that on as well. If you have other teachers in your school or at your grade level, friends, whatever, feel free to share it. So just getting started today, we are talking about the third grade standards for both economics and personal finance. And for some reason, the upload kind of messed with the font, so I apologize. It's going to look a little goofy, but hopefully the information will still be there and able for you to use. Just a note about these standards and how we've done it today. One of our favorite resources is Econ EdLink, and so if you're ever looking for resources on your own, we recommend starting there, econedlink.com or .org, sorry. When you see a slide in the PowerPoint, anything that has a photo has a hyperlink in it. So you can just click on the photo and go to the hyperlink and find the resource that's mentioned there. And if that doesn't work for you, the hyperlinks are also listed in the notes section below the slide. And it's kind of fun with the third grade standards that we're talking about today. The history geography piece has to do, in the Iowa standards, has to do with migration and immigration. And so we've tried whenever possible to tie these into that theme as well. And they lend themselves pretty well to that. And you'll see that with this first standard quite readily. The first standard used historical examples to describe how scarcity requires a person to make choices. And here we have a link to a lesson on scarcity with Lewis and Clark. And the one, Pack Your Wagon, also has to deal with migrating across the United States. It's a lesson on scarcity on the Oregon Trail. And obviously scarcity is pretty easy to teach there. There's only a limited amount of space in a wagon, and so everything you take with you has to fit into that space. Off to Interactive Island is a little bit different. It was written for grades K through 2, but can easily be adapted for the third grade, and it provides an activity to explore the concepts of economic decision making. Students are given a limited number of tokens and asked to exchange those tokens for goods in preparation for pioneering in a new land. They have to develop this new land and start it from scratch. They will make decisions on what to leave behind and then give reasons for their choices and identify the costs and benefits of their choices. So it's not just making the decisions, but identifying the why behind it. So using historical fiction to teach economic concepts, this is more for the teacher than for the classroom. It's a video that kind of demonstrates how economic concepts and history can be overlapped or tied together in the classroom. And then the same thing with integrating economics into U.S. history lessons. More for a teacher, it's a little webinar learning how to integrate history and economics. And it's easier than you might think, so I highly recommend taking a look at those two. Both of them are very short, but should be pretty helpful. Standard number 3.13, identify how people use natural resources, human resources, and physical capital to produce goods and services. And this one can be really fun for the kids. Lemonade for Sale is a story, but students learn about the resources needed for lemonade, and then they produce their own lemonade and classify the resources that are used in production. It's kind of a fun one. This is also a book that you can find read online to students if that's a different way you want to present the story to them. How people make things is a video. It's from the Mr. Rogers series, and it's a video of making crayons, and it's the basis for this lesson plan. It's a full lesson plan, how people make things, and it's fairly easy then to pull out what are the physical, human, and natural resources used. The color of resources kind of extends that lesson. It's a lesson plan from Finance in the Classroom and talks about how people make things and ties in the whole making of crayons with that. Where did the pencil come from? Talks about, again, physical resources, natural resources, and human resources in making of pencils, the wood, the lead, the eraser, and so on, and then how that's put together. And then focusing on a pencil, students have a writing assignment there, the right stuff, and they can discover the relationship between those resources and goods. So then you can even tie in not only history, economics, personal finance, but also the language arts and writing piece of it. In the mystery workers, the human side of production is explored, and especially here in Iowa, where farming is such a big industry for us, this is a fun way to tie that in and look at the human side of farming and natural resources as produced by the farmer. Going on to 3.14, describe the role of various financial institutions in an economy. This has to do, of course, with banking and other financial institutions. And so Big Banks, Piggy Banks digs into the pros and cons and choices that you have to make about saving money. And that's an Econ EdLink lesson plan. You can bank on this. This is a 4-part series. The 4th part has to do with banking. And the entire series covers everything from what money is to budgeting, saving, credit cards, the whole thing. But it's all at a younger elementary level. So 3rd grade students should be able to understand that. It doesn't take very long to teach. 4-part series sounds like it's pretty involved, but really the lessons are quite short and should be quite doable in a 3rd grade classroom. Banks, bankers, and baking in the bottom left-hand corner there, what it's all about. This digs into the different pieces of banking, what you have to do to open a bank account, what a deposit slip looks like, what a withdrawal slip looks like, how you submit your money to the bank, how you get it out. I believe it goes into checks a little bit, but a little more of the practical side of banking. In hands-on banking, this is a wonderful series of lessons. It's a whole curriculum. And one of the lessons, the lesson that we've linked here on this slide, talks about practical banking, saving, and spending, lessons for all ages. You can adjust them for different age groups, but really gets into the practical side, and it is a full curriculum. So if you're looking for something more than just a standalone lesson, this would be a great place to start. And then Jack and the Bank Stock is another lesson from Econ EdLink. It talks about the story of Jack and the Beanstalk, which is a familiar fairy tale, and it's used to describe the role of banks. So kind of a fun way to do it. Okay. Going on to 3.15. I'm going pretty fast because there are several standards here, and I want to leave a couple minutes for questions at the end if there are any. 3.15, analyze why and how individuals, businesses, and nations around the world specialize and trade. Again, if you're doing migration and immigration, this ties in nicely with that, looking at migration and how that influences trade across the nation, and immigration and what different things immigrants bring with them, and how that fosters trade as well, trade back to their countries of origin. So starting in the middle with the blue map, trade exchange and interdependence. It might be a little bit advanced for 3rd graders, but it does a really good job of explaining trade in just 3 minutes. It's a quick little video. And it will at the very least get some of the terminology and words that we use in trade familiar to the students and help them understand why we're so dependent on trade throughout the entire world, even more so now than ever before in history. Trade in colonial history speaks specifically to that era and gets to the idea of exchange and specialization, how the original colonists would exchange fish for grain and other things because they didn't really have a monetary system yet. Much of their exchange was done by bartering. And so it gets at that. Another great tie-in if you're doing a colonial history piece during the third grade. Off to the right-hand side, barter for fish and poi. If you're tying your history into Hawaii at all, this is fantastic. It covers barter, specialization, productivity, interdependence, all based on fish and poi, which are resources that are rich in Hawaii and that they use to trade in other parts of the United States and throughout the world to help their economy. And again, it's a full lesson plan and has other links within the lesson plan if you want to expand it. And then an individual trade activity. An easy activity to demonstrate individual trade is simply to hand out a coloring sheet and hand out one color per student, but maybe give them 3 of that color, 3 crayons, but all of the same color. If they want their picture to be more creative and more interesting, they have to figure out that they can trade their colors with other students to get the colors they need. And that's just a quick and easy way to demonstrate trade within the classroom, sometimes used as a starting off point, a way to introduce the concept of trade. And in the bottom corner with the orange there, where did you come from? Trade in the US and around the world using fruit as the basis. So students will study fruit and different kinds of fruit and the seasons that they become ripe in and why we like to trade fruit across the United States, but also across the world, so that all year long we have access to grapes and to oranges and to strawberries and things like that, which if we didn't trade, we would not have access to, because obviously in Iowa we can only grow fruits and vegetables during certain seasons. In the notes to this slide, there's a bonus lesson, I have no money, would you take wampum? And that's based on the Native Americans, again, if you're tying it into colonial history, kind of a fun lesson to get to extend the lessons there. Okay, 3.16, describe how people take risks to improve their family income through education, career changes, and moving to new places. This one is easy to tie into the whole concept of migration and immigration, because many times that's exactly why people migrate or why they immigrate to the United States from other country. Immigration is also a huge political topic right now, and so there should be plenty of ways to tie it into current events if that's something you do in your third grade classroom. In the bottom left corner there, I list just some of the ways to get you thinking about ways to tie it into your social studies curriculum. For example, education. Why do they take risks with education, or how? They risk paying the tuition and spending some of their hard-earned money to increase the education and therefore increase the wages. And changing careers, you risk leaving one job for another, or in the case of immigration, technology change, businesses closing. Often those things necessitate making choices, taking risks, and acquiring new jobs, hopefully at higher income. And then moving and freedom, available land was a reason the pioneers took risks and moved. Some of the colonists and early people in this country moved here for freedom. Company transfer is a current reason. Maybe you want to live in a different neighborhood. All of these are different reasons that people move to new areas. And then we've tied in some lesson plans as well. How Many Days to America is a book. There was danger in their original country, and so these immigrants decided to come to America and find a better life. It was a risk they took. 50 Cents in a Dream. This is about Booker T. Washington, and he took the little bit of money he had, took a chance, took the risk, and got some education and pursued his dream. And again, another book to read to the class, but with many lesson plans available to extend it. A career family tree is a fun way to see how careers and career changes impact a family. And so this is a lesson plan with a diagram that students can fill out. What did some of their family members, what were their careers, and how did they change over time? You might tie in their first generation college attendees if you have that in your classroom. And you could see then how education and taking the risk to pursue an education will change the career outcomes for an entire family. And Mitchell is Moving is a cute little ready-to-read book. Mitchell decided to move on his own. There was nothing, he wasn't forced to do it, but it was a voluntary move, and the impact that had on his relationships and his living circumstances. Okay, explain an individual's responsibility for credit and debt. This one was a little trickier to come up with actual lesson plans for, but most classrooms have some kind of ways of teaching proper behavior, classroom rights and responsibilities, things like that that you want to teach in the classroom. And if responsibility is one of the things you're teaching, it's very easy to tie in responsibility for credit and debt. So you can teach responsibility for your own actions, taking care of your own materials, your own desk, use your head, don't put things off. All of those are also things that apply to credit and debt. If you borrow it, you must pay it back. If you are in debt, you owe somebody. It's your responsibility to pay back the money that you borrowed. Tied in with this is the Smart About Money, Consumer Rights and Responsibilities website. Talks a little bit in there, again, about character, and the responsibilities of consumers might be a little bit advanced for third graders, but good information for teachers to help you apply the concepts of responsibility to the classroom, not only for credit and debt, but in many areas. The one at the bottom, Finances and Personal Responsibility, Who is to Blame for Your Money Problems? This is a great article, mostly for teachers. One disclaimer, it does come from a biblical website. The information is still spot on. It's very accurate, and the only Bible references are way at the bottom. The rest of it is just common sense, good information, regardless of your religious outlook on things. This just has a lot of good information in it. And again, the only Bible references are at the bottom if that's something that you don't want to bring into your classroom. Moving on to 3.18, determine the importance of savings and investing in relation to future needs. And there are several links here. Tia Isa wants a car. She discovers in this book and through this lesson plan that there are many things to save for. She chooses to save for a car, and it digs into a little bit long-term and short-term savings. Things that you can save for a short amount of time to purchase, but then also why it's important to save over the long term. Sonia meets her future self, does an even better job of the long term, and Sonia on this wonderful little skateboard meets up with herself as a young adult, as an adult, and as an older adult, and kind of digs into some of the lessons she's learning as a child and discovers why those lessons are important. My Classroom Economy. This is actually a classroom management system, but in the process of doing classroom management also teaches financial concepts and personal finance activities. And so during the course of a year, the students apply for jobs within the classroom. They might have to erase the boards or take out the trash or things like that. Students are assigned different jobs. They earn money, quote unquote money, classroom dollars for this. They earn extra money for doing extra work, and they are fined or taxed money for not getting work done on time or not doing it well. And so schoolwork can play into this as well. If they show good effort on their schoolwork, or if they do their schoolwork in an excellent way, they earn more money. If they're late with an assignment, they might have to pay a fine. But by doing all of this, they learn the value of saving money. They have the opportunity to pay off the rent that they pay for their desk. If they pay off the desk, then they don't have that rent anymore and they can save even more money. And at the end of the year, they have a little auction and they can spend their money at this auction. So it's a free, all the printable materials that you need are all part of it. It's all included in the link. It's hard to describe in just a few seconds here, but it's very complete, very easy to follow. And then Clay Piggy is an online game where students can earn, spend, save, and even more lessons are taught in that one. So typically we try to focus on free things here, but if you're a member of Brain Pop and you search for budget, you'll find other things listed there. And then I found one called Pint Size Economics. It's for purchase for $8. And it looks very interesting, so I thought I'd throw that up there too, even though it's not a free resource. Okay, we also have a monthly newsletter. If you're interested in getting ideas, we send 2 or 3 ideas for each grade level and make sure that they're hands-on, tied to the standards, very practical. Simply send me an email and I can get you signed up for that newsletter. And we've got just a couple minutes left for questions. Is there anybody that has...
We had a question come in from Brandy, and she asked if we were going to get the links at the end of the webinar. And yes, Brandy, we are going to send this out, so you will have all the links at the end of this.
You will get a copy of both the PowerPoint and the recording. Any other questions? Okay, I thought maybe second one came up from Brandy.
Yep, she just said thanks, and I will plan on sharing with my team. Great.
Okay, wonderful. Yes, we'd love for all of you to share this. There's all the resources we found are free, so feel free to share them with anybody you think would be helped by it. And we're also going to do a drawing at the end of this presentation, and when we send out the PowerPoint and the recording, we will let you know if you were the winner of the drawing. So make sure that you take the little survey at the end of this. It's just a few questions, doesn't take long. But if you fill that out, then you're eligible for the drawing.
Mary said, thank you. Saved me a lot of research time. We'll share. Great to hear, Mary.
And that's what we're here for. If you have any other questions about economics or personal finance, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. I represent the Dordt College Center for Economic Education, but I'm doing this also with Kyle Osborne from the TS Institute for Financial Literacy. And together, we are here to serve. So if you ever have questions, please reach out to us. We'd love to help you in any way that we can. And especially if you're in our area. I'm in Northwest Iowa and Kyle is in Southwest Iowa. And so if there's any way we can reach out to your school, we'd love to do that too. Okay, if there are no further questions, we have reached the 4 o'clock hour and we want to keep this short for you. We know your time is valuable. So without further ado, we will sign off. Don't forget to fill out the survey and we'll look forward to hearing from you guys in the near future. Thanks so much for attending.